Hey everyone, this is CJ from CJ Coins and Crafts, and welcome to NumisCast. This program is dedicated to exploring, learning, and understanding our coinage. Today we will be talking about the minting process, specifically all about the dies used in coining. Dies are the key component in the creation of our coins. These dies are pieces of steel rod that are machine cut into 3-inch sections. CNC machinery forms one end to a cone and then polishes it to create a smooth, shiny surface. This object is now called a die blank. These die blanks are used at different points in the die creation process to either become a hub or a die. There are generations of dies. Generation number 1, which is the master hub. The master hub is the first die that is created by having a positive design directly engraved into the die face. Generation 2, the master die. The master die is created by taking the master hub and pressing it with over 250 tons of force into a die blank to create a negative image of the original design. Generation 3, the working hub. The master die is used to press into another die blank to create a positive image of the design, which is the working hub. Generation 4, the working die. The working dies are heat treated to prepare them for striking. The working dies are the only dies that are used to strike coins. They are heated up to 1800 degrees in a furnace and then quenched in liquid to lower the temperature. This makes the steel dies harder, but also makes them more brittle and more prone to cracking. The dies are finally tempered in an oven twice at 450 degrees. This multi-generational process allows a single master hub to create multiple master dies, with each master die having the ability to create several working hubs. Each working hub can create 200 to 300 working dies. All master hubs and master dies are still produced at Philadelphia Mint. The dies are shipped from Philadelphia to Denver, where the Denver's die shop produces the necessary working hubs and working dies from the masters. The Denver shop also makes the unfinished working dies to be later used at the San Francisco Mint. During 1985, the Mint was developing a new process for the hubbing, or the creation of each die, in a single squeeze. Prior to this, each die was pressed, removed, and heat treated, and pressed for a second time to set a strong design into the die face. The single squeeze method would eliminate the second hubbing and avoid the possibility of hub doubling, or making a doubled die, errors caused by alignment issues during the second squeeze process. Mid-1996, the Denver Mint facility opened its own die making shop. This shop was equipped with single squeeze hubbing presses. By the end of 1996, the single squeeze hubbing presses were also installed in the Philadelphia's Mint's die shop, so that in 1997 they too could begin creating dies using this single squeeze method. A little history about die making. Between 1792 and 1836, the designs of the coins were hand engraved into the master dies. Inscriptions, dates, stars, and other design elements were added to the working dies, which are the dies that actually strike the coins, instead of the master die. 1836 through 1867, a new hubbing process utilizing the French portrait lathe was used to copy and reduce the master form into a master hub. This master hub was then used to create the master die, which would have the remaining design elements. During this time, the working dies had the date and mint marks added. Between 1867 and 1907, the hill reducing lathe was introduced, which allowed for much better quality master hubs to be created. Some coins that had ribbon letters that were struck into the master die until 1886, after which they were moved to the master hub. From 1907 to 2008, the hill reduction lathe was replaced by the Janvier reducing lathe, which allowed for larger original models and varying heights of relief. The date was no longer punched into working dies, but the first 2 year digits were sculpted into the original model. The last 2 digits were added to the master dies, and mint marks added to the working dies. This process changed in the early 1980s when all 4 year digits of the date were sculpted into the original model and thus part of the master hub. New master hubs were created each year. Between 2008 and present, the U.S. Mint transitioned to digital technology using CNC machines to create these dies. This new technology made the die creation process much more efficient and much more precise. Proof dies were created from hand-picked working dies with the greatest detail and polished to a mirror-like finish. Cameo dies were working dies also hand-picked with the sharpest detail, cleaned, polished, and then immersed in a solution of nitric acid and alcohol to produce a light frosting over the entire die face. The die face would then be polished, leaving the frosting on the incused design elements. The Mint uses a combination of automation and hand polishing to prepare the proof dies. For example, at the San Francisco Mint, tape is applied to areas that don't need polishing. Then the exposed areas are polished with an abrasive diamond paste. To apply the frosted texture, a laser cuts tiny dents into certain areas of the design. Once the proof die has been frosted and polished, it goes into a clean room to get a thin plating of chrome. This chrome process protects the design during striking. It takes 2 dies to be able to strike a full coin, an obverse die and a reverse die. The obverse die is the design for the front of the coin and is also called a hammer die. The reverse die has the design for the reverse or back of the coin and is also called an anvil die. The 2 dies are placed into a coining press where a blank coin is struck between these two dies to create a completed coin. The first U.S. coin presses were screw-type presses. It usually took 3 men to operate a screw-type press, which involved 1 person to insert the blank coin and the other 2 to turn a large iron bar which screwed down the upper die, pressing the design into the coin blank. This process was extremely labor-intensive and could only produce a couple dozen coins a minute. In March of 1836, a steam-powered coining press was imported from France and was used at the U.S. Mint. This powered press turned out 100 coins per minute. In 1901, the third Philadelphia Mint facility opened with new electric equipment, which replaced all steam-powered aspects of coin production. Modern presses are computer-controlled, with a single machine producing over 700 coins per minute. If all 65 of Philadelphia's presses were running at one time, they would be making over 46,000 coins per minute. I hope you enjoyed this podcast and it helped increase your knowledge and understanding on the joining me today in covering the minting process. Please catch me on the next episode for part 2, where we talk about the minting process, this time where we dive into the coins side of the minting process. I hope to see you on the next episode. Thanks for listening.